If you have ever sat in a quiet room, staring at the door, and felt an undeniable, crushing ache over a child who has walked away from everything you taught them, this is for you. Heaven has restored 7 precise truths explaining the exact nature of the sealing power, and the 4th truth will completely shock your understanding of eternity. Let us step into the first profound reality. The first truth is that the temple sealing is not merely a conditional contract. It is a permanent, metaphysical tether. When your child was sealed to your family in the house of the Lord, something physical in the spiritual realm occurred. Most people view the sealing ordinance as a lovely, symbolic promise that only remains valid if everyone behaves perfectly. They look at a wandering child and assume the covenant has been shattered, broken into pieces by poor choices and mortal rebellion. But Revelation shows us something entirely different. The sealing power, restored through the prophet Joseph Smith, does not create fragile threads of conditional affection. It forges eternal chains of divine physics. When Joseph Smith spoke of the sealing power in Doctrine and Covenants section 132, he was not speaking of a gentle hope. He was declaring an absolute cosmic law. He revealed that whatsoever is bound on earth by this specific authority is bound in heaven. Did you see that? It is bound. It is a reality that exists outside of mortal time and current circumstances. When a child rebels, the tether is not severed. It is stretched, but it remains brilliantly, gloriously intact. This brings deep comfort because it means your child's current spiritual amnesia cannot undo the eternal reality of what was spoken over them at the altar. To fully comprehend the magnificent weight of this first reality, we must examine what it means for your daily life. It means you must fundamentally change how you view your wandering child. You are looking at them through the lens of mortal time, seeing their current mistakes, their current alienation, their current rejection of the light. But heaven looks at them through the lens of the covenant. Heaven sees them as permanently marked by the sealing ordinance. They belong to a family kingdom that has been legally and lawfully established in the heavens. Their rebellion is a temporary mortal condition, while their sealing is an eternal factual reality. How does this affect you today? First, you must stop mourning them as if they are permanently lost. They are not lost. They are momentarily blinded, but they are still securely tethered to your foundation. Second, you must begin speaking to their spirit, not just to their current mortal attitude. When you pray for them, remind the Lord of the covenant that binds them to you. Third, you must entirely reject the whisperings of the adversary that tell you your family is broken. Your family is not broken. It is currently enduring the extreme stress testing of mortality, and the covenant was designed specifically to withstand this exact stress. That is the first truth. Now the second glorious truth. The covenant operates most powerfully in the dark. To understand this, let us look at a mother named Miriam. Miriam lived in a state of constant, suffocating anxiety regarding her youngest son. For 3 years, he had not only stepped away from the faith of his childhood, but he had actively turned against it, adopting a lifestyle that was entirely foreign to the peace of their home. One late evening in November, Miriam was sitting at her kitchen table. The house was completely silent except for the heavy ticking of the wall clock. The cold tile beneath her feet mirrored the chill in her heart. The blue light of her phone screen illuminated her face as she read a text message from her son. A message filled with harsh words, firmly establishing boundaries that locked her out of his life. In that moment of profound isolation, Miriam felt that the temple ceiling was utterly void. She believed she had failed as a mother, that the adversary had won, and that the beautiful promises of the temple were nothing more than a tragic, unfulfilled fantasy. She wept until she had no more tears, believing her son had successfully untied the eternal knot. But here is what Miriam did not yet understand about the sealing power. She was judging the efficacy of the covenant by what she could see with her natural eyes. She discovered the profound teachings of Joseph Smith regarding the unconditional love and the far-reaching grasp of the everlasting covenant. Miriam realized that the sealing power was not a fragile string that snapped the moment her son pulled against it. Instead, it was like a divine elastic band. The further her son ran into the darkness, the more tension was being created by the covenant. The sealing was not sitting passively in the temple. It was actively operating in the very darkness where her son thought he was hiding. He could ignore it, he could mock it, and he could run from it, but he could not magically unseal himself from the eternal lineage established by the priesthood of God. This revelation changed everything for Miriam. The cold kitchen was no longer a place of despair. It became a sanctuary of intercession. She realized that her son's harsh text message was actually evidence of the friction he was feeling. He was fighting against the unseen tether. How does this reality change how you prepare today? First, you must recognize that your child's loudest rebellion is often a direct reaction to the silent pressure of the covenant calling them home. Second, you must find peace in the unseen tension. The further they run, the stronger the pull of the ceiling becomes. Third, you must deliberately choose to stand firm at your end of the tether, keeping your own covenants bright and unbreakable. Because you are the anchor point they will eventually be drawn back toward. This leads us to the third truth, which completely shatters how we view divine intervention. The sealing covenant actively pursues the wayward child. This is the truth that 95% of people completely misunderstand. Most members view the temple sealing as a locked door. They believe that if a child wanders, they have walked out of the door, and the parents must sit inside the house, weeping, waiting for the child to hopefully, eventually, knock on the door to be let back in. But Revelation shows us that the sealing is not a locked door. It is an active, relentless search party. The prophet Joseph Smith laid the doctrinal foundation that Orson F. Whitney later expanded upon when he taught that the tentacles of divine providence will reach out and eventually gather the wayward sheep back to the fold. Notice that specific imagery. Tentacles of divine providence. A tentacle reaches, it grasps, it extends far beyond the central body. As we study these covenants together, and if you are finding comfort in these truths, consider subscribing to our channel so we can continue bringing you these sacred realities. You must understand that the sealing power is a living, breathing mechanism of rescue. It does not wait passively for your child to figure it all out on their own. Because of the sealing ordinance you participated in, heavenly hosts are legally authorized to continually reach into the life of your rebellious child. The covenant gives angels jurisdiction to operate in the very shadows where your child has wandered. Your child may think they are entirely alone in their new lifestyle, entirely separated from the religion of their youth. But the truth is, the sealing has commissioned divine forces to orchestrate moments of sudden clarity, instances of unexplained emptiness in their sin, and unexpected collisions with truth. They are being constantly pursued by the grace attached to your temple altar. How do you apply this profound reality right now? First, you must stop praying as if God has lost track of your child. Pray with the absolute certainty that the tentacles of providence are already wrapped around them. Second, you must look for the small, subtle evidences of this pursuit in your child's life. A moment of softness, a sudden memory of their childhood, a question they ask out of nowhere. Third, you must align your own heart with this divine pursuit, offering unconditional love that mirrors the relentless grace of the sealing, proving to your child that neither God nor you will ever write them off. That is the third truth. Now the fourth reality, and this is the specific milestone that almost no one truly comprehends. It is the complex relationship between agency and the sealing power. The common belief is that moral agency is the supreme, trumping law of the universe, and therefore, if a child uses their agency to reject the gospel, the sealing is powerless to stop them. People believe agency overrides the covenant completely. But here is the most important part of Joseph Smith's revelations on eternity. While God will never force the human will, the sealing covenant ensures that the circumstances surrounding that agency are constantly bombarded by redemptive friction. Let us understand what this means. Your child absolutely retains their agency to choose the dark. God will not strip them of their ability to choose. But because they are sealed, God will absolutely alter the spiritual environment in which they are making those choices. The covenant demands that they cannot sin in peace. The Holy Ghost has jurisdiction to interrupt their rebellion, to make the taste of sin turn to ashes in their mouth, and to amplify the quiet echoes of their true eternal identity. They can choose to walk away, but the sealing ensures that the road away from home is filled with spiritual roadblocks, divine detours, and an inescapable, lingering homesickness of the soul. Let us look at a father named David to uncover the fifth truth. The fifth truth is that your intense parental sorrow is actually a sanctified mechanism of the covenant. David was a man who felt he had completely failed. One rainy Tuesday morning, he stood in his gravel driveway, the cold rain soaking through his coat, watching his daughter's car speed away down the road. She was leaving not just their home, but everything they stood for. She had packed her belongings in anger, throwing accusations at David that cut him to his very core. As the red taillights faded into the gray mist, the crushing weight of perceived failure dropped onto David's shoulders. He fell to his knees right there in the wet gravel, weeping openly, begging God to tell him where he went wrong. He reviewed every family home evening, every scripture study, every priesthood blessing, looking for the fatal flaw in his parenting that had caused this devastating departure. For months, David walked in a dense fog of grief, believing his daughter's rebellion was a direct reflection of his inadequacy as a father. But David was missing the extraordinary reality of the fifth truth. The anguish of the parent is part of the redemptive process. When David finally sought deeper understanding of the eternal sealing, he read the accounts of how God himself wept over the wickedness of his children. He realized that his profound parental grief was not a mark of failure. It was a mirror of divine grief. His sorrow was proof that his heart was bound to his daughter's heart in a true, eternal way. The sealing does not make parents immune to pain. It makes their pain a conduit for grace. David's tears in the driveway were not wasted. They were sanctified intercessions, gathered up by heaven as raw material to fuel the rescuing power of the covenant. His continued, unbreakable love for his daughter, even when she was entirely unlovable, was the earthly manifestation of the heavenly sealing. When David realized this, his entire posture changed. He did not stop sorrowing, but his sorrow transformed from the despair of failure into the holy, active work of waiting. How does this affect you today? First, you must forgive yourself for your parenting mistakes. The sealing compensates for mortal flaws. Second, you must view your tears not as weakness, but as a sacred offering that honors the covenant. Third, you must stand in the doorway of your home, spiritually speaking, with your arms open, ensuring that your grief never turns into bitterness, because bitterness repels, while sanctified grief draws them home. Now the sixth truth, which builds perfectly upon the fifth. The sealing overrides both geographical and spiritual distance. In Doctrine and Covenants section 132, the language regarding eternal families is expansive. It speaks of thrones, kingdoms, principalities, and powers. It speaks of a continuation of the seeds forever and ever. Notice the sheer scale of this promise. It is massive. It is not limited by the walls of your earthly house, and it is certainly not limited by the geographical distance your rebellious child has put between you. Many parents feel that when their child moves to a different city or entirely cuts off contact, the influence of the parents is neutralized. But the sealing creates an atmospheric pressure of grace that surrounds the child no matter where they go on this earth. They can block your phone number, but they cannot block the covenant. They can refuse to read your letters, but they cannot refuse the subtle, constant ministering of angels assigned to their eternal lineage. The sealing bridges the gap. It means that the spiritual authority of your righteous home is projected into the very room where your child is currently sleeping, even if they are 1,000 miles away. How do you prepare today to utilize this sixth truth? First, you must make your current home a place of intense spiritual light. Because the sealing connects your child to your home, the brighter your faith burns, the more warmth is transmitted through the tether to wherever they are. Second, you must speak their name out loud in the walls of your home, claiming them by the authority of the covenant, sending a spiritual shockwave through the eternal link. Third, you must rest in the profound comfort that God's geography is not our geography. To heaven, your wayward child is completely visible, intimately known, and constantly surrounded by the atmospheric pressure of the sealing. They are never out of reach. They are never beyond the boundary of the covenant's jurisdiction. This brings us to the seventh and final glorious truth, the ultimate return. The covenant demands a future reckoning that leads to restoration. Joseph Smith prophesied that the promises made to the fathers would plant in the hearts of the children the promises made to the fathers. He taught that the power of the sealing is so magnificent, so entirely comprehensive, that it will eventually arrest the attention of the rebellious child. Whether in this mortal life or in the vast, stretching eternity of the spirit world, the truth of their identity will eventually confront them. The sealing guarantees that they will not be allowed to drift in darkness forever without facing the blinding reality of who they are and who they belong to. They will eventually remember. The pain of their rebellion will eventually exhaust them, and when they finally turn around, they will find that the tether is still there, waiting to pull them out of the abyss. This is the long game of eternity. It is the ultimate triumph of the sealing power. It is not a question of if the covenant has the power to save them. It is only a question of when they will finally yield to its relentless, magnificent pull. Let us formally recap these profound realities. First, the temple sealing is a permanent, metaphysical tether that cannot be severed by mortal rebellion. Second, this covenant operates most powerfully in the dark, acting as an elastic band that pulls harder the further the child runs. Third, the sealing is an active, relentless search party, utilizing the tentacles of divine providence. Fourth, while agency is preserved, the sealing ensures the rebellious child's circumstances are constantly bombarded by redemptive friction. Fifth, your profound parental sorrow is a sanctified mechanism of grace, not a mark of failure. Sixth, the sealing completely overrides geographical and spiritual distance, creating an inescapable atmospheric pressure of truth. And seventh, the covenant demands an ultimate future reckoning that leads to restoration, whether in this life or the next. The central message you must take away today is this: the sealing power is infinitely stronger than any mortal mistake, and your wandering child is vastly more secure than their current choices suggest. You are not fighting a losing battle. You are participating in a guaranteed, eternal victory. So the fear you once held that the adversary had stolen your family? It was never true. The chains of heaven hold fast. Subscribe to our channel to continually join us in uncovering these magnificent, sacred truths, because the next pattern we uncover may be the one that changes everything for you. Share this message immediately with a parent whose heart is breaking, because they need to know their child is tethered. Keep your own covenants bright, stand firm at your end of the tether, and walk forward today with absolute certainty.